What up, beautiful babies? It's the Madden curse, week 7. We're going to do matchup previews. I'm going to do some predictions, and I'm going to try to get a few of them right. Might have some reaches this week, but we'll see. We'll take a look. First things first, let's take a look at the updated rankings. This is week 7, rest of season rankings. These are my own personal rankings now. I'm ranking them based on a combination of your record, points scored against, and then your overall roster as well. I am favoring record, unless I just see something that just looks, you know, a little bit off. But let's go ahead and take a look. Number 1, Brent. He's undefeated, hasn't lost, putting up a ton of points. Number 2, Fat. He's got 1 loss on the season, also putting up a ton of points. Has the best 1-2 combination at running back. So he did have a big injury to wide receiver, but he has some young guys that could potentially blossom and take that spot. So he's still in the 2 spot. Dan has moved up to the 3 spot. I mean, look at his roster. A ton of those running backs that were kind of iffy, they're all now starting and potential RB1s. Kenneth Walker, Damon Pierce are talking about these guys as league winners. Ramondre Stevenson, and then some idiot traded him Travis Etienne, who's taken over the number 1 role in Jacksonville, it looks like, as well. So where it looked like his strength was wide receivers, it probably still is, but he has a stable at running back now. So Dan is, like I said, I think he's going to be a real dark horse here as far as well, it's not a dark horse anymore. He's third. He's got the third best record, and he's got a great shot at winning the title if things continue the way they are. In the 4 spot, we've got JT. Scott actually has scored a few more points than JT for the season, but JT has by far the most points scored against him. He's the only one that has 800 plus points scored against him. I feel like it's every year JT is the guy that has the most points scored against him. I don't know why, but my guy is still 500 after the he's the most points scored against him. He's still 500. He's got he's up there as far as points scored as well. So that's why he got the edge there at the 4 spot. Scott, you are at 5. Jason, I've moved you to 6. Jordan, 7. Marshall, 8. Frank, 9. Now, from the 4 spot to the 9 spot, they're all 3 and 3, right? So it's all pretty close. Again, if you're wondering why, hey, you're on the lower side of that, look at points scored. Look at points scored against. If you haven't scored that many points and there hadn't been that many points scored against you, and you have a decent record, well, I'm probably going to put you lower on that ranking. Still ahead of me, though, where I come in at the 10 spot. Alex at 11 and T at 12. Same logic. Alex, T, and myself all have the same record. I have the most points scored of the 3, so that's why I'm in the 10th spot. Alex and T are both pretty close there. So, Alex was up by like a point. I gave him the nod. But that could change if one of these guys gets a W this week. Let's take a look. The first matchup of the week is myself, 1 and 5, versus Brent, 6 and 0. Fun fact, me and Brent have the longest streaks in the league currently. Brent has a 6-game winning streak. I have a 5-game losing streak. So we will either extend those or shake some things up. On Brent's side, we both have a pair of Eagles on bye. Otherwise, not too much. I've got Dallas Goder is my player on bye, Dallas G, and then Brent has Devontae Smith. Starting in his lineup, he's got Mahomes, Derrick Henry, Kareem Hunt, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Mark Andrews, Chris Olave. That is a ton of firepower. We do see Jalen Waddle and Mark Andrews are both listed as questionable, so we'll assume that they're going to play for now. Pittsburgh is the matchup against Miami's wide receivers. You know, they're pretty low as far as what they're giving up fantasy point wise to wide receivers, but they just played a pretty good game against this guy named Tom Brady last week. So, I mean, they're going to have to do that again for me to have a shot here. Derrick Henry playing the Indianapolis defense is probably a pretty good matchup for him as well. Um, Mahomes versus San Francisco. I mean, the Atlanta Falcons just put up 28 points on San Francisco, so not really sure about that San Fran D that we're used to. And then I don't really ever talk about defenses, but the Buccaneers defense is going against the Carolina Panthers. PJ Walker is starting. I think I read a stat last week where he had one pass that went for positive yardage. Everything else was behind the line of scrimmage, and either wide receivers got some yaks or they didn't. So that that's worrisome. Like I said, ton of firepower. Waddle, Andrews, Olave, Tyreek, a lot of guys here that can put up numbers. On my side, I've got Brady, Jonathan Taylor, questionable. We'll see if he plays. Hopeful this time. He's been out for a while. Leonard Fournette, Mike Evans, Monra St. Brown is back, fully healthy. I've got Hunter Henry in the tight end spot. Waiver week. And then Cortland Sutton is still in my flex. Had a stinker of a game last week. Still a top 15 receiver. Still think he'll get it done. Call me crazy. I like myself in this matchup. I think the Buccaneers are going to destroy the Panthers. I think Amonra, I'm banking on him getting back to that week 1, week 2 form where he's 20, 25, 30 points. He's playing Dallas. So it is a tough matchup. But I mean, I imagine they're going to have to be throwing a lot to try to keep up with Dallas. So I'm picking myself on this one. It could blow up in my face. Like I said, Brent's got a ton of firepower. Let's go to the next matchup. It's Fat versus Jason. Actually, I like this matchup too. Bye week season. Let's see. I don't actually see. Is that 0 buys on Fat side? No buys on Fat side. Just Marquise Brown is hurt. Dotson is questionable. Jason's got Miles Sanders on a bye, and that looks like it. So on Jason's side, Kyler Murray, Breece Hall, RB1 Breece Hall, Brian Robinson, Terry McLaurin, DeAndre Hopkins, Zach Ertz, Devontae Adams going up against Fat Joe Burrow, Austin Eckler, Saquon Barkley, Christian Kirk, Tyler Lockett, Gerald Everett, David Montgomery. Barkley, Lockett, Everett are all showing as questionable. Saquon's shown that way for a few weeks. He's played great, so expecting more of the same. Lockett and Gerald Everett, we will see. Fat does have a few guys he can pivot to. Assuming they play, I like Fat in this matchup. I do think it'll be close. Like I said, I think Jason's DeAndre Hopkins is probably going to come back and have a big game. Marquise Brown is hurt, so he should just pop right into the wide receiver 1 role, I would think. And then he's flexing Devontae Adams versus Houston. So I think it'll be close. I think they can put up a ton of points. I do think Fat pulls out the victory. The third matchup of the week, Fat made this the matchup of the week. I think he's just being nice. I mean, I'll say it. I don't really see anything special about this matchup. In fact, I think this has potential to be one of the lowest scoring matchups of the entire week. Jordan, he's got Lamar Jackson, who is questionable. Najee Harris, Aaron Jones, Michael Pittman, Mike Williams, Evan Ingram, Jerry Jeudy. On his bench, I don't see any buys. I do see quite a few players listed as questionable. On T side, we got Daniel Jones, Jeff Wilson, Eno Benjamin, Jamar Chase, Deontay Johnson, TJ Hawkinson, Chris Godwin, and on his bench, we've got DeAndre Swift, T. Higgins, both listed as questionable. Swift should be back. He's been gone for a few weeks. The expectation is he's playing this week. I am going to assume that Swift is going to play, and I'm going to assume that T. Higgins is also going to play. Assuming that they both get in this lineup, I am picking T to win this matchup. You know, him and if Jamar Chase is questionable too, so assuming Swift and Jamar Chase both play, Chris Godwin could have a huge game. Benjamin is still getting the snaps there in Arizona, is my understanding. I like T to get a second victory of the game and more than likely get himself out of that 12th spot in our rankings. Um, on our next matchup, we've got Scott versus Marshall. They're both 500. On Scott's side, we got Jared Goff, Christian McCaffrey, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Keenan Allen is in the lineup. We'll see if he plays. He hasn't played since week 1. It's been a terrible hamstring injury. DK Metcalf, Noah Fant is listed as questionable as well. And then flexing Amari Cooper. He's got Josh Allen, Irv Smith Jr. on buys, both pretty essential pieces. Allen, especially. On Marshall's side, he's got some buys too. This is actually, he's got currently starting Trevor Lawrence, Alvin Kamara, James Robinson, Deebo Samuel, Drake London, George Kittle, Kenyon Drake in the flex position. J.K. Dobbins is questionable, and Drake has been stealing carries from him. So don't even know if Dobbins would have the primary role if healthy. A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, and Tyler Higbee. They are all on buys. Hurts and A.J., I mean, that's 50 points, right? So that's tough to replace. For that reason, I do give the edge to Scott. I just think he's got a little bit more. Obviously, got to pay attention to Keenan Allen, but if he can't play, Jacoby Myers is sitting on his bench. That's a great substitution. So I like Scott in that matchup. The next matchup is Dan versus Alex. As I mentioned, Dan is a star rising in the rankings. He's number 3. He's projected to lose this matchup um, on ESPN rankings. But let's take a look. Matt Ryan, Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, CeeDee Lamb, who's questionable, Josh Palmer, who's questionable, Taysom Hill, Damon Pierce. So probably have some buys here. And let's see. Yeah, Justin Jefferson, Gabe Davis, Kirk Cousins, Dawson Knox, Darrell Henderson. I guess I'll say his name. Cam Akers. Not that it matters, but they're all on buys. So if there was a week to play Dan, this is probably the week that you would want to play him. Alex has his team name's Let's Ride. He's starting Geno Smith. He just cut Russell Wilson. Geno Smith, Nick Chubb, Raheem Mostert, who's questionable, Brandon Cooks, Alan Lazard, David Njoku, Brandon Ayuk in the flex position. Ayuk just had a big game last week. They are playing Kansas City, but it's always kind of tricky when you're chasing last week's points. You know what I mean? Could he have another 20-point game? Yes. Could it all just go right back to Deebo? Yeah. So we'll see. Alex's side, he does have some buys too. Dalvin Cook. Allen Robinson on a buy. Would he have started? I don't know. He had a big game last week. Hasn't really done much besides that. James Conner is sitting in his IR spot, questionable. We'll assume he's not going to play. And Kyle Pitts, healthy, still sitting on that bench. He's going to make him prove it again. I like Dan in this matchup. I think the trio of Ramondre Stevenson, Kenneth Walker, and Dameon Pierce is going to get it done. This is assuming CeeDee Lamb plays. He's questionable. And then even with Josh Palmer, who's questionable in his lineup, I think he can get it done. He may be able to go find another wide receiver to flex there. But if Keenan Allen's not playing, Palmer's probably a good choice there. So I like Dan to pull this off even with all the buys. The last matchup of the week is JT versus Frank. 2 500 teams. On JT side, Justin Herbert, Zeke, Josh Jacobs, Curtis Samuel, Josh Reynolds, who's questionable, Travis Kelce, Jamal Williams. Sounds like we got some buys out here. And we've got Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen, Eagles D. We got an Eagles D on buy. I mean, I guess they are good. Cooper Kupp, Adam Thielen. Those are the big names on buy. On Frank's side. Okay. So Frank's got it's Thursday, so he's got plenty of time to fix this. But Matthew Stafford, who's on a bye, Joe Mixon, Devin Singletary, who's on a bye, Stephon Diggs, who's on a bye, DJ Moore, who probably should be on a bye. I mean, let's be real. The offense is horrible. Will Disley, Isaiah McKenzie in the flex, also on a bye. he does have some guys to pivot to. I mean, looks like Michael Thomas is already listed as out, so not him. Darren Waller uh, might be able to get in there at the tight end. Chase Claypool looks like a wide receiver substitution. And then Melvin Gordon, J.D. McKissick. I guess you can flip a coin there. And then he's going to have to find a quarterback somewhere. It's hard to tell with what Frank's going to put out there. I'm going to take JT on this one just because, like I said, until we kind of see where the subs come in and what they can do, it's hard to pick. I mean, there's a ton of guys on buys. I mean, Stephon Diggs is the offense. So we got JT in that matchup there. So those are the matchups. Those are the predictions. And we gave you the rankings, baby. So we'll be back on Tuesday with a Week 7 Madden Curse recap. Love you.